anytime you tune into one of our videos, you've probably noticed we do a little bit of a recap at the start of each one of our deep dive discussions. And what we like to do is take that recap and peel it out as its own YouTube video. So if you're watching just the recap, there is actually a link in the episode description that will take you to the full discussion on the episode. And you can definitely drop a comment on that video. Tell us what you thought about the episode. But this was episode... Now I'm panicking because it's been so long since I've done this. I think this was episode 85.
Yep.
Yes. Episode 85. And this one was called... what?
Intense Interrogations.
Yes. And this was an extremely intense episode. We open up back in Barthy the Elder's abode. The party has essentially thrown the Willmaster into the portable hole, along with a couple of other Ruby Vanguard. And there is the nearby caravan essentially approaching to examine the kerfuffle as to what has happened. The explosion of Laudna's fireball. I think there was another like really loud noise. And so the party's very quickly trying to figure out, what do we do? There is a cellar to this house. And so some of the party goes down to the cellar, the basement of this place. And then I think Aurum, Imogen, and FCG have this idea, specifically Imogen and FCG, to pretend like they're part of the Ruby Vanguard and that FCG has malfunctioned, and that those noises that they heard would have been the sounds of this automaton malfunctioning. Laudna puts like her ichor out onto FCG to make it look like oil. There's a knock at the door, and the party is extremely surprised to not just see a couple of Ray Lauren, but actually no, one's a Ray Lauren, a Juggernaut, and then the elvish looking character with the pale white skin who seems to be the leader who's come over to investigate, and a third person who the party recognizes to be Ivan Hydroga, the owner of the museum from the museum heist back like episode 20 something.
Yeah, back in the Heartmore.
Yeah, talk about a throwback. But if you connect the dots, it actually makes sense since the party was sent there by what's her face and Dressar. She alerted them to this heist mission. And she had been working with the Paragon's Call and tangentially.
Right. Gianna Hexam, right?
Thank you. Gianna Hexam. But it turns out that Hydroga is part of the Ruby Vanguard, has joined their ranks, and has made his way up to Ruidus, and immediately recognizes the party. And to which the party's like, yeah, we joined too. And what happens over the next 20 to 30 minutes is what we can call a masterclass in amazing roles from Laura Bailey. Laura Bailey is actually going to have numerous deception, persuasion, and intimidation roles, all of which that are going to hit above 20. So one of those first ones is convincing Hydroga that we've joined the Ruby Vanguard too, to which Hydroga is actually relieved to see a friendly face and confesses to Imogen that he despises being on Ruidus, that sort of like what was promised, kind of the grandiose nature of like, we're freeing the world from the gods, that it's really not as nice as it was cracked up to be. And he really misses his life of comfort back on Exandria. They also, Imogen also convinces the elvish leader that FCG was the noise that they had heard. And when the leader asks about, well, have you seen the Willmaster? Imogen explains that the Willmaster had come by previously before and had moved on as the Wukar stampede occurred in the previous episode. They haven't seen them since. And again, there's a successful deception check that happens with this. They then offer to join the caravan, to which Hydroga is especially excited about. And they decide to call it for the night and to meet back up first thing in the morning to continue on to Kaviris. Is that right? The city that they're heading to?
Yeah,
capital city?
Yeah, I believe so. Kaviris or
Kaviris. So they leave, and then the party, they can't go to bed. They have some unfinished business. They decide to open up the hole and interrogate the Willmaster. The problem here is that as soon as Ashton opens up the portable hole, he is affected by Dominate Person, casted by the Wheelmaster down in the hole. Ashton immediately attacks and hits Imogen. The party scurries to close the hole back up. The spell essentially ends after Ashton takes some damage. And they decide to reopen the hole with everyone basically jumping in at once and beating up the Wheelmaster so that she can't get a spell off. They do that. They knock the Wheelmaster out. And then they decide, we got this awesome harness. Let's use the harness on the Wheelmaster. So they use the harness. Orym dons the harness and gains the ability to cast Dominate Person himself for 24 hours, basically, till his next long rest. There's also a lot of dialogue around, like, what do we do? Like, maybe we should just use the harness completely and do the hour ritual to consume this person. Chetney actually does grim psychometry on the harness and has a vision of Ludinus using the harness on this butterfly nymph fae creature. And Laudna especially is very much on team, she keeps saying, let's suck out their juices. And FCG is really like, hey, like we can't kill people. We're the good guys, right? Sure, FCG, sure. Anywho,
I knew you were eating that up.
Oh, dude, I was feasting. Anywho, there's still the issue of the two other people in the hole, the two other Ruby Vanguard members. Both of them are fairly young. One of them, they unbind and take the blindfold off, and this is Petrov Godo from Exandria, who has discovered that he is an exalted and has sort of joined the Ruby Vanguard, very naive, and has made his way up to Ruidus. There's this tension of, are they going to kill this boy or not? And Imogen successfully, another deception check, successfully convinces the boy that the Wheelmaster actually was betraying all of them, and they are the true allied people of Predathos, and that if he wants, he can continue with them on the caravan, to which the boy is relieved. He's like, oh, thank goodness. They put the boy back into the hole. Excuse me. They put the boy back into the hole. They pull out the half-orc. They do the same thing with the half-orc. Another successful deception check. And they're basically, the two boys are like, okay, yeah, this is great. I'm glad we found the real good guys. And they decide, let's send you off to the caravan and we'll all head out in the morning. Now, there is one other detail. They decide, well, maybe we should walk the two boys back. So FCG and Fern decide to walk the two boys, well, one's a young man, to the encampment where the caravan's waiting. And when they get there, they find a Ruby Vanguard person interrogating members of the caravan to figure out like where some of these missing people have gone. And the members of the caravan are like, oh, there's two of the young people right there. And as they point, Fern recognizes the interrogating senior official is actually one Otahan Thule. They immediately try to leave to escape. Otahan just, mega leaps in front of them, recognizes them, recognizes that Fern is, or rather Fern reveals that she herself is Rudisborn. And so Otahan's like, well, I shouldn't kill you, but your friend, probably fair game. Combat ensues. FCG gets hit with 3 attacks, gets knocked down. It's looking like FCG is going to die. And Sam Riegel says, I have 1 spell left. It's Banishment. And at the 6th level, I can cast it on 3 people. He casts it on Otahan as a Hail Mary, and it succeeds, but she uses a legendary resistance to pass the check for it, so it fails. And then he casts it on himself and Fern to banish both of them, the final spell that he has. And then as soon as they're banished to this other plane, they begin doing their cloud, like their smoke form, the spell that Keyleth had given them. Also, before this happens, he mentally tells the rest of the group, Otahan's here, run. And they all go into their smoke form as well. But not before, what's her face? Laudna does her hunger of the void, hunger of the darkness. What's it called?
Hunger of the shadow. And I think we're in the second half.
Oh, are we? Oh,
I think so.
I thought it was when like they flew off that it went to the break.
Maybe it was. It's been a while since I watched it, but I thought it was when like it was an Odahan cliffhanger.
Oh, maybe
it doesn't matter. Just you tag me in whenever.
I'm sorry, man. My bad.
No, you're
jump
good.
on here. It's been so long since I've done one of these. I just want to do the.
No,
whole
you're
thing.
good. I just, I was happy for you to keep going. I just wanted to let you know that I'm here.
I was just going to say she consumes the Willmaster, and I'm just real concerned about Laudna over here.
Yeah.
And then they all become smoke forms and basically fly away. I thought that was the break, but it might be. You're right. That might be after.
I honestly don't know.
Sorry about that, buddy.
No, you're good. You're good. So yeah, very scary moment from Laudna where Delilah basically, shows her cards. We're going to be talking about that. The only other thing I'd mention is that Odahan jumps like 100 feet in the air to try to like slash at them, but misses. So she's got some ups for sure. So they reconvene everybody in their misforms and they decide to head off towards the capital city. And as they're flying, they realize they're going to have to find a place to rest along the way. So they're going, and like we've talked about before, there are some crazy storms on Ruidus that these misforms basically like can't risk going into. So they're looking for another place to kind of hide out and wait for the storm to pass. And they ultimately come across this like kind of fissure or crack in the earth that they fly down into. And it goes pretty deep. And as they're going, they can see like bones down here, but they just keep going deeper, and they can eventually hear rushing water. And amongst this kind of underground cavern that they find themselves in, there's like this little alcove that Matt describes as kind of like the inside of a geode with all of like the crystals jutting out. And they could rest here, but they realize that maybe isn't the best idea, because if they do, their mist forms will run out. So they'll have no way of like flying back out the way they came. It would be like really hard to get back out. So instead, they do transform back into their normal selves, but they decide to check out this rushing water that they have found is like this underground river. And thankfully, Fern has prepared water breathing, so that makes them basically go all in on this plan. So they do that, cast water breathing, and basically dive in and begin to explore this underground cavern. They swim, and they eventually get to like a crossroads, if you will, where they can go one way with the current, or they can go another way against it. But they can hear like the splashing of water from the against the current direction. So they decide, let's check out that way. So they make their way up and basically come to this cavern, if you will, where it's tall. They can't even see the ceiling, but there's a waterfall in this cavern. So that's the noise they were hearing. So Imogen casts dancing lights and sends them up. And they find that in this cavern, there are these like runic inscriptions on the walls. And they can actually see that there is a temple here. A very old looking temple, but it seems to be elvish in its design. So they're like, what the heck? Let's investigate this. So Laudna casts spider climb on herself and kind of just starts going up this wall and this waterfall to get a better look at this temple. And inside she can see that there is like gardens and greenery. And they deduce that these must have been enchanted in some way in order to have survived this long. They also deduce that this temple must be back from when Ruidus was still a part of Exandria. So she makes her way up and then uses the immovable rod with a rope to throw down for everybody else to come up and join her. But as she goes up, she sees there's like this tunnel kind of behind the waterfall, sort of. So they take note of that. And Chet, when he gets when everybody gets up there, Chet actually casts Grim Psychometry again. Just on, I guess, on the temple, but kind of on this whole place, sort of. And he gets a vision, but it's not that clear because like it's so old that he can't really like make sense of it. But Matt describes him see the sky turn from blue to red, and just there's kind of this fear that he feels, but it all is just too old for him to understand. So the vision ends, and the party starts just kind of walking through the ruins of this temple. They come across one of these gardens, and there's red berries, and actually an old porcelain doll that's like with elvish features. So Laudna snatches that up, of course. And Fern actually tries one of these berries, and they're delicious and heal her for 1 HP. So this is a good berry in terms of 5e. Like, and I had a player that loved the good berries. So the party take a few of these berries, and then they continue walking around the temple. And they can see a lot of it is destroyed, both from just like rocks jutting into it, and also what looks to be like like extreme heat damage. But then other parts of the temple are like almost pristine. And they must have been protected by some sort of magic to have been untouched like this. So after they explored a little bit, they basically realized they have two options. They can kind of follow that like underground waterfall tunnel that they saw, or they could continue just to climb up the rocks and see where that leads. So they actually decide to have Fern use her wild shape to turn into a little sea slug to go investigate this underwater tunnel, which is similar to something she did way back. I think it was the same time as the museum heist, at least that era, where she swam like into like a pot that was spewing out infinite water, and she ended up in the plane of water. So they're kind of like, let's do this again with a test with Fern, just in case there's something weird going on. So Fern does that, turns into a slug, starts swimming, and she makes it against kind of the current of this water until she reaches a point where there just is no more current, and she can see like a light up above her. So she swims about 80 feet up to breach, and when she does, she finds herself in this lake surrounded by like this beautiful forest, and it's like just like a beautiful kind of cloudy day, Matt describes. And so she tries to use the telepathic bond, I think that's the name of the spell, to communicate and let everybody else know what she's seen, but she can't, which implies she's on another plane of existence entirely.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where the episode ends. Devious little cliffhanger. But so once again, that was episode 85 of Campaign 3, Intense Interrogations. And if you are just on our recap video and you want to tune in for our full discussion, there will be a link down in the description below.